Oh boy! Another video complaining about game reviews. Bring out the too much waters, the God hand comparisons, and Lara Croft should get breast cancer.
In Tomb Raider 3, create a storyline in which Lara gets breast cancer. Imagine the drama of a vulnerable Lara Croft still persisting in her worldly adventures despite her illness.
Piece of shit?
Look, we know how bad game reviews can be. Every day the internet bashes someone for having the nerve to share their opinion. But who can blame them when these people are so wrong? These reviewers praise a game to high heaven, only for the game to be as fun as riding a slip and slide made of sandpaper. Other times they bash a game to hell, only for the game to actually be alright. They'll give their lists of praises or complaints, and you're stuck wondering what they're actually talking about. How does this happen? Are game reviewers just idiots? Well, that's what the internet wants you to believe, but let's be nuanced about this. Sure, some reviewers fail to do their due diligence, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt here. After all, game reviews are actually very difficult to write. In fact, I'll go one step further. Video games are some of the most difficult art pieces to analyze. It makes sense when you look at other forms of media. For centuries, scholars have dissected the minds of artists to understand every brushstroke in a painting, every note in a composition, and every word in a novel. But for most people, all they do is take one look and say, that's alright. But this is art! With video games, it isn't that simple. Not only do they contain art, music, and writing that can be analyzed, it's all mixed in with interactivity. Unlike other forms of media, the audience becomes an active participant in the performance. Although developers design their games to be experienced in a specific way, it's ultimately up to the player to control how everything goes. Of course, developers still have some control since they're the ones building the sandbox. They provide players with the tools to experience their worlds, but sometimes players have a hard time using them. The mechanics of a game might be too complicated, the tutorial might not explain the game very well, and sometimes the mechanics simply don't work. Most people can find these faults as soon as they start playing, but there are some faults that aren't as obvious, with some players not even encountering them. Since many modern games are open-ended, players can complete objectives in any order they wish. This may seem like a good thing, but depending on how you play a game, it can vastly alter your experience. Some people like to complete all side quests before continuing with the main story. You might grind enough experience to make yourself overleveled, which can make the rest of the game boring in comparison. This happened to me when I streamed West of Loathing. I completed the haunted house side quest first, and I unlocked some of the most powerful items in the game, making the rest of the playthrough a cakewalk. You can have the opposite problem if you rush through a game and focus on the main quest. You might not have enough experience to face certain challenges, making the game more difficult. Maybe you're the type of person who likes to exploit glitches, making the game too easy. Maybe you like to challenge yourself and play a game with certain restrictions. Sometimes reviewers do this without even realizing it. Take Polygon's review of The Last of Us as an example. The reviewer played the game more like a stealth game, trying to avoid combat because he found the violence too gruesome. Being the psychopath that I am, I just killed everyone in my way when I played the game.
We can work something out, alright?
When the reviewer reached the point when he was forced to fight enemies, he found it jarring as he played it stealthily at that point. Many people complained the reviewer didn't play the game right, but if he beat the game by playing like this, it's completely valid. If you're new to a series or genre, you might be frustrated when starting out, while a more experienced player might enjoy the game immediately. You can mitigate this by looking through various walkthroughs, guides, and let's plays, but since game reviewers are the first people to play a game, they don't have any of that. They have to rely on their own skills and on whatever the game tells them to do. The devs might give pointers on how to best experience the game, but sometimes that could be detrimental. Let's look at IGN's review of Alien Isolation. The reviewer was having trouble playing the game as he was constantly getting killed by the xenomorphs. He was frustrated with walking through the same sections over and over again because he kept dying. At the end, he said that he chose the hard difficulty because the developers recommended it. But perhaps if he played it on an easier difficulty, maybe he would have had a better time? Measuring difficulty in games can be, well, difficult. Developers play a game so much they don't even realize how difficult their games could be. Just play any NES game to know what I'm talking about. Some people enjoy the challenge, while others want to relax while playing games. Fortunately, many modern games offer various difficulty settings that cater to everyone's skill level, but it can still be a challenge to find the right difficulty setting. If a game is too easy, people will get bored. If a game is too hard, people will quit in frustration. This can be alleviated by allowing players to switch the difficulty whenever they like. But some games don't give you that option without starting over. It's good criticism to point out, but then you get into a huge argument over the artistic vision of a game that I don't have time to go over here. In summary, if you're wondering if a reviewer played the same game as you, well, they might not have, as your experience may vary greatly from theirs. Not every playthrough is alike. You could play a game in a different order, play the game on a different difficulty, or even things I don't have time to cover, like playing games on different hardware, or a player's physical ability to play a game. When reading a review, you're getting the experience of one person. They might have a different skill level from you, and they might play games for a different reason than you. At the end of the day, it's only an opinion, and you need to respect it as such. However, it's still weird seeing how different many of these reviewers can be from the general consensus. It's weird reading reviews of people who didn't understand what they were playing. It's crazy to see how some reviewers get basic facts about games wrong, or even have trouble following basic instructions. How does this happen? To find out, I talked to a few professional game reviewers. To be honest, I've been working on this video for a while. I know talking about games journalism is a massive minefield in this circle, so I wanted to do my due diligence. I was talking about this video with some friends, when suddenly one of them called me out since I'm not a professional game reviewer myself. It turned out he was a professional reviewer, and he was a good enough sport to sit for an interview and help to get other reviewers to talk with me. Obviously, I'm keeping these people anonymous, but I thank you all for your help. Talking with you all revealed a few surprises, but it also confirmed a lot of what I expected. What makes a good game reviewer? You probably want someone who's played a ton of games of different genres on many different platforms. They should be knowledgeable about video games, the video game industry, and as a bonus, some knowledge on game design and even some game development. Although there are many reviewers who do fit this criteria and are very passionate about their work, not all of them are like this. There are other reasons why some people become games journalists, whether it's to kickstart their career as a journalist, to get their foot in the door in a game company, or because their car broke down in San Francisco and now need a way to survive the high cost of living. They might not be as knowledgeable about games, but does it make their opinions worthless? Absolutely not. People read game reviews because they want to know if a game's worth playing. They might already be familiar with the game in question, but some people might be entering a series or genre for the first time. For these people, it might be beneficial to read a review from a newcomer's perspective. They might see issues with the game that most veterans of a series might ignore. Maybe the game isn't friendly to newcomers by not having decent tutorials. Maybe the controls and interface are too difficult to understand. Maybe the story is so convoluted that it requires a college course to understand it. It's important to let newcomers know what to expect and to prepare for any difficulties when playing for the first time. It's not like reviewers are purposely trashing a game they know they wouldn't like. Most of them choose the games they get to review. It might not be the new hyped game everyone's excited to play, but most reviewers are willing to give every game a fair shot. They'll let the reader know if they aren't familiar with the series or genre, and make it clear if there's something they don't understand about a game. Even if they don't enjoy a genre or a series they're playing, professional reviewers should leave all biases aside and judge a game based on its own merits. I'll use myself as an example. I don't like the Hitman games. I recently streamed these games on the Break Room Twitch channel, and I wasn't having a good time with them. My problem is I have no patience. I don't want to spend most of my time waiting for something to happen, so that's when my inner psychopath shows up.
If you feel like it. You bastard!
This is true for most genres that require patience, such as stealth games, spreadsheet strategy games, Soulsborne games, most RPGs, and any game with this type of menu. Does this mean all these games are bad? No! These games are still mechanically sound and well designed. I might not enjoy the gameplay they provide, but I can still see how others can enjoy them. As long as you can present your argument well, there shouldn't be a problem. But there are many reviewers who struggle with this. I'm probably the last person who should criticize people for their writing, because it took me months to write this script, but it seems many game reviewers have trouble articulating their thoughts about games. I know having an English degree isn't a requirement to write game reviews, but you still need to provide your opinions in clear detail. They tend to use the same buzzwords constantly, which do nothing to explain their thoughts. I've read through a ton of reviews to make this video, and I'm surprised that I haven't gone insane, so I decided to throw this skit together to explain it all. Here's the top 10 worst aspects of game reviews. Number 10. Archaic. Gaming has changed significantly over the years, but what's bad about a retro throwback? Unfortunately, most reviews don't have a good answer to that. Let's take IGN's review of Double Dragon Neon as an example. It's obvious the reviewer didn't like the game, complaining about how the game relies too heavily on its arcade roots. He doesn't explain why this is a bad thing though. He mostly talks about the mechanics, complaining how the game exhausts your HP rather than gives you a satisfying challenge. What does that even mean? The only actual criticism in this review talks about the controls, where he describes them as finicky. Speaking of which, number 9, finicky. I know it's difficult to explain game feel, but you need to be more specific than finicky. What exactly about the controls are finicky? Is there a significant amount of input lag? Does the game not recognize some of your button presses? Does the character move like they're walking on ice? Try to be more specific. Number 8, repetitive, and their cousin tedious. Let's be honest, most games are repetitive. They have you doing the same thing constantly for hours on end. Many people find that fun, but sometimes it isn't. Why exactly is it not fun? Does the game lack enemy variety? Is there not a lot of things to do? Are you seeing the same areas over and over again? Number 7, engaging. By their definition, any form of media is supposed to be engaging. This is one of the most pointless words to put in any review. What about the game catches your attention, and why? That's the reason why people are reading the review. Number 6, generic. Many games use similar tropes to each other. Try to go into detail as to why a game doesn't have its own identity, but you need to be careful when talking about this, since you could run into number 5, comparing a game to other games. Sure, some games can be similar to each other, but doing this can muddy your perspective of a game. You should review a game based on its own merits and not because it isn't what you want it to be. Too many times people will write off a game because you can play X game instead, but there could be room for both. What about this game makes it a worse experience? What makes it not worth their time? Number 4, comparing a game to other games, where it doesn't call for it. Seriously, do we need to compare everything to Dark Souls? Number 3, mixing in a bunch of unfunny sketches. Shut up. Number 2, rewriting the game manual. It's important to talk about all the game's features, but you need to have a reason for it. Use it to prove your argument and not to list features on the back of the box. And the number 1 aspect of game reviews that drives me crazy, bringing oh god, I gotta talk about this, don't I?
Whoa, hey, don't drag me into this.
Well, I knew I was gonna get shot eventually, so why not go out by standing up for what you believe in? At the end of the day, a game review is nothing more than an opinion. Although there are some objective features of a game that can be analyzed, people's enjoyment of a game ultimately revolves around them. Even if someone enjoys a game overall, there might be some aspects of a game that can make people uncomfortable. Generally, if a review is uncomfortable with covering a particular game, they'll recuse themselves from reviewing it. But if they do decide to play the game, they will feel obligated to talk about any ongoing controversies. Usually, reviewers won't let it sour their opinions. A game is made by hundreds, if not thousands of developers who shouldn't be sunk down by a few bad actors. But what if the game itself makes you feel a bit iffy? In recent years, there's been a ton of talk about the representation of women in video games. Fortunately, we've made tons of progress in making gaming more diverse, but there are still some aspects we need to work on. Sure, I like TNA as much as the next guy, and even some DNA for that matter, but I can still see why some people aren't comfortable with it. If you're a reviewer, it's important to notify these facts, and you can do so while also being respectful of those who do enjoy it. Although so many people bashed this review back in the day, I feel GameSpot's review of Grand Theft Auto 5 does a good job of this. For the most part, the reviewer liked the game, but she found the misogynistic undertones a little unsettling. It's important to point this out, as it might have been unintentional on the developer's part, and maybe for the next game, they'll work on this. However, some of these reviews read like a high school principal yelling at you for breaking the dress code. It's okay if you don't like sexualization in games, but you still need to respect the artistic intent. As long as it's not something overtly offensive, it should be taken as something that isn't for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't go around insulting others who like it. That also goes for the assholes who harass these people for not liking it. There are a bunch of different reasons why you wouldn't like a game. Whether it's because you're uncomfortable with the subject matter, you don't like how it plays, or you find the person behind the game to be an ass, even if the games industry is full of ass. But at the end of the day, it's just a video game. We use it to escape the bullshit of the world. We don't need you bringing it up, Kotaku. With all that said, why does everyone take these reviews so seriously? Why do people get so worked up that they're sending death threats? Well, it's not because of the reviews. Hell, many people don't even read them. No, they get angry because of the one thing I've avoided mentioning until now. The score. Your favorite game needs to have a high score on Metacritic so you can brag how your favorite game that you haven't played yet has a higher score than other people's favorite game. There's a good reason why I haven't talked about review scores until now. And that's because they're bullshit. Since each site has a wide assortment of reviewers, it's difficult to understand the scale because each reviewer's opinions vary greatly from each other. Although one reviewer might bash a game because they didn't like a particular game mode, it can be ignored by another. Sure, there's editors that try to keep a consistent standard, but you still see cases of games getting wildly different scores for similar issues. It only confuses readers who stick with one site for game reviews, and in some cases, the score doesn't represent the reviewer's opinions very well. Besides, who cares about the score? Anything that scores at least a 7 is a good game. Is there much of a difference between a 9 and a 10? Hell, what about between a 9 and an 8? These are all great scores! Any dev should be proud of getting review scores that high. But the worst is when people use scores to compare games, even if said games are nothing alike. Is the Final Fantasy VII Remake the same quality as Call of Duty Black Ops? Is Psychonauts 2 better than Metroid Dread? Has there never been a game that's better than Ocarina of Time? These games are so radically different from each other that it's stupid to compare them. If you're complaining that a score is too low, then it's obvious your mind is already made up for a game. Just play the game and enjoy yourself. Not even reviewers like giving scores. Shocking fact, they actually want you to read the reviews. The only reason they give scores is because that's what the audience wants. People check out reviews just to view the scores, and that's what's keeping many of these sites afloat. As the internet consolidates to only a few sites, many smaller game sites are struggling to keep the lights on. The only way to get attention nowadays is to write articles that can either circulate on social media or can be optimized for search engines. You can see this whenever you're searching for help on a new game, and all you see are the bunch of similar articles from a bunch of different websites, many of which are owned by the same company. And of course, you need to write as much clickbait as possible, even if it doesn't make any sense. It's not like games journalists want to write this garbage. Unless you're working for some of the bigger sites, you're not getting paid much for your work. Most freelancers only get paid 5 cents a word, with some sites not even paying their writers. To compensate, you have to write tons of articles a day on whatever game everyone's talking about at that time. You have to be fast, because if you wait too long, the SEO will change and your article will be thrown out. The sad part is most of these articles aren't even profitable. During a massive layoff, one company revealed only about a third of their articles made any money. It doesn't help that all their brands are competing with each other, especially since they're all posting the same exact articles. It wouldn't be so bad if they did anything to help these journalists out, but they don't. When recruiting people to write for their sites, many will promise a fulfilling career in journalism, or they'll help them in their journey. From what the reviewers told me, that isn't the case. These places are mostly sweatshops that force unsuspecting gamers to work for free so they can profit off of all the clicks. If they complain, they can simply get rid of them, and those journalists are left with nothing to show for it. You think their jobs would be more enjoyable because they get to play games all the time, right?
Yeah, no.
Try playing video games for 12 hours a day to meet deadlines. Generally, reviewers only have about a week to play a game and then write a review before embargo hits. Sometimes sites will allow review in progress articles if reviewers don't finish in time, but the smaller ones just want to get the reviews out ASAP. Sometimes reviewers don't have enough time to finish games before needing to write a review. They need to strike when the iron is hot to get that sweet ad revenue. While these reviewers are barely surviving with little pay, the rest of the internet decides to harass them because they scored a game 1 point higher or lower than what they feel is deserved. They must obviously be paid off by publishers, even though most journalists don't even interact with developers. Hell, some of them don't even get free games. For as much flack as we give reviewers, we need to understand they're already dealing with tons of issues on top of all the harassment from gamers. From the low pay to the long hours, only the most dedicated can make it as a games journalist. Many quit before turning 30. Some might get lucky and end up as an editor or work in the games industry, but many others will struggle as they let their dreams die. Some of the reviewers I've talked to are barely making enough to survive, and some are relying on loved ones just to keep themselves afloat. It's the main reason why games journalism is a mess, and it's truly a shame. Writing a game review is already a challenge, but if you add in the long hours, low pay, and no respect from gamers, it makes it nearly impossible to review games properly. Is there a solution to all this? Unfortunately, not that I can see. I've always been supportive of going independent, but I know that isn't viable for many. Although there are a few cases of journalists finding success in their own, most of them establish their brands on bigger sites beforehand. Most journalists want a job that pays decently and provides benefits. It's unfortunate that not many sites provide that. Ultimately, it all comes down to how we treat games journalism in the future. The internet loves to bash games journalists, but if we want it to improve, we need to start supporting them. Help out independent reviewers by supporting their Patreons or subscribing to their YouTube channels. Ignore all the clickbait SEO garbage coming from Valnet and gamers and focus on quality. We need to show these companies that we care about quality analysis on video games, and we need to start making it profitable for them. As video games continue to evolve, our analysis and understanding needs to evolve along with them. There's so many different components of games that it's difficult to keep track of it all. We need highly skilled people who can take the time to fully dissect a game to its basic components and understand what makes them work. We haven't even begun to see the full potential of gaming, and with proper analysis, we may hopefully get there. I do have to give credit where credit is due. Although the bigger sites tend to get the most hatred, from talking to these reviewers, they tend to treat their writers the best. They pay well and they give their writers freedom to do whatever they want. You have my respect, and I hope you can pave the way for improving games journalism in the future. But for the love of God, can you please stop comparing everything to Dark Souls?
Never!